here. Steve, could you come up?
Sure.
I just kind of want to walk through, the analysis and everything subsequent to the testing.
Is it okay if I read a statement first? It's just a little over a page.
Sure. If you could state your name and address and position for the board reporters, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. My name is Stephen Hertzberg, 850 Euclid Street, Suite 650, Cleveland, Ohio, 44115. I'm the project director of Election Science Institute.
And where's Election Science Institute located?
We're based in San Francisco.
Okay.
I have printed copies of the statement if you'd like it. It's just a page and a half.
Sure.
I think I provided this. Is this the one you provided the other day?
No, this is, I just brought it with me. Anyone else would like a copy?
Can you spell your last name for me?
Hertzberg, it's just a little too loud, H-E-R-T-Z-B-E-R-G.
Thank you.
Sure. Can I start? Good. In April 2006, prior to the May 2nd primary, the Cuyahoga County Commissioners contracted with the Election Science Institute, also known as ESI, to conduct a comprehensive review of how Cuyahoga County's new election system actually performed on an election day. ESI understands that an election system is not simply a piece of equipment. An election system cannot be separated from the people who run the system, including the election officials, the booth workers, and the voters, and the procedures for administering the system. While the Diebold ActiVote TSX voting system passed both federal and state certification requirements, ESI sought to analyze the entire election system in the real world and sometimes extreme conditions of an actual election. In conducting this research, ESI's sole intention was to provide assistance to Cuyahoga County. The report does not explain to the vendor, the election staff, the booth workers, or the voters. Rather, the report describes what ESI found when researchers surveyed voters and booth workers, looked at the incidents reported by booth workers, and examined results reported both on paper and electronically. Our study identified both positives and weaknesses. The value in doing a critical evaluation is learning how well parts are working and what needs improvement. From this standpoint, the ESI study fulfilled its purpose. If not for the study, many of the issues now being addressed would have remained unaddressed. The good news from the ESI's report is that approximately 90% of those voters surveyed liked the new system, had confidence that the votes would be recorded correctly, although 10% did have some problems. Over 90% of booth workers like the system, but want some better training. I think you're addressing that. With the appropriate will displayed by all relevant stakeholders, ESI is confident that all the issues in the report can be satisfactorily addressed. Some important questions remain, however. After 8 weeks of repeated requests of board elections to provide ESI with data that did not include 17-year-old and curbside voters, why did ESI still receive data contaminated with this information? How will the DOE provide accurate data to partisan election lawyers in a timely way during a future hotly contested election result? Number 2, why does the Diebold TSX machine not provide an error message when data from a machine, in this case the election archive we were discussing earlier, does not copy to a memory card? ESI observed approximately 4% of the machines that did not copy election results from the machine to a memory card without repeated attempts by the operator. And I think as we all witnessed over the last few days, that happened in front of us in what were, I believe, 2 machines at least. Number 3, did booth officials actually switch memory cards on election day? And what impact does that have on transparency and auditability? Just to expand on that point, we went through 6,300 incident reports, and while we saw a discussion of removing memory cards, we did not see any evidence of memory cards being switched. We were not aware that that had actually happened, and we'd certainly like to look at that further. Number 4, can we confirm that 24 TSX units in the warehouse used on election day do not have any election data on them at all? And lastly, why do over 50% of the VVPAT summaries not match the election archive results, even when all missing VVPATs are eliminated from our analysis? So with this last point, we've actually updated our analysis with the updated data that we got over the weekend and took a look at the summary reports at the end of the VPAS and compared them to the election archives. And we still had 50% that didn't match, even when we removed any that we knew were missing. Lastly, we look forward to continuing to work with the vendor and the DOE to improve the system in advance of November 2006. The value of the study has been to bring to the forefront issues that must be addressed now rather than later. The result will be a much improved election operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hertzberg.
I just want to make sure, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Steve. I just, let me just ask the question. With 77 days to go before the November election, are you recommending that we switch the medium in which we vote in Cuyahoga County?
No. I don't think we ever recommended that.
No, I don't think we did either. But I didn't want to say that you said it based on our conversation. I want to make sure that
I think what we're recommending is that you put together an action plan, which it looks like you're doing. Try and address those things that make sense to address for November 2006, and address the rest later. I think that's the prudent way to move forward.
I'd like to ask a question about item number 4, 24 TSX units in warehouses we use on election day. Do not have any election data on them at all. Does that mean that these machines were not put into use at the polling location, or does it mean they were put into use and no votes were recorded on? Was that the?
It could be, from our understanding is that they, and I haven't looked at what 24, I don't have the exact list of the 24 machines and serial numbers, so I can't really confirm.
Is this new information that you just?
It was asked, I don't think I've been provided the actual 24 units, at least that I've seen.
It's in the report and the list of the units or appendix. I did promise Michael to send him an email, and I have not sent him that email with that same list, but it is in the report.
It could be any one of these situations that we discussed, so without going actually into each individual.
Can we get answers to these 5 questions that have been brought up by the meeting on Tuesday? I mean, between a combination of the
Number 5 is, I don't know how long it took 8 weeks to do this work according to ESI, and to go back over and pour through over 50% of the DVPAT summaries issues on that. I think what
It says after 8 weeks of repeated requests.
No, I'm talking about the number 5 issue. Why do over 50% of the DVPAT summaries not match the election archive results and all this? And I think we'd have to come to sort of realize to percentage-wise as opposed to going through every single one of the 50%. The other concern is that we're losing precious time to prepare for November's election. The main issue is the differences between the memory archive and the memory card is the way we had seen them, but maybe we might see the summaries.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we can come up with reasons why these would have happened, but I think to go through and say this is the reason why this happened in this particular case, I think would be a task that would be substantial and certainly would require substantial resources at this board in advance of the November election. Again, there may be questions, and again, what I'm suggesting is we can come up with reasons why this would have happened, but my preference, my recommendation, I should say, to this panel would be that we need to begin focusing on the November election. I think what might be helpful is if you want to look in retrospect at the May election and November election, bring in a firm to go out and do a sample as a quality control check about where we are relative to Steve's report and where we are then. That may be a worthwhile exercise, but I think at this point we have 77 days, and I think we just need to begin focusing.
But Tom, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that we could come up with reasons why this happened, right? Without going through each individual.
We could hear a logical explanation as to why these groups of things that could have happened. I mean, and based on conversation.
Could that be prepared for us?
For Tuesday? We come up with reasons why they happened.
We provided the vendor a list of questions which addressed some of these issues after our Friday meeting last Friday. I think we would just like those questions answered. I think that would help address some of these issues. We were just looking for plausible explanations. I mean, we appreciate the dilemma that you're in with an election coming up, and certainly don't want to hamper your progress in getting these action plans implemented.
And Mr. Hertzberg, as though, I think I have to state that there have been serious issues that have been raised to the general public, the voting public in Cuyahoga County, as to their faith into the accuracy of an election system. I received a email from the Board of Elections on the 11th of August, which was your draft report. And let me ask you this, are you based in Cleveland? Do you live in Cleveland?
I live in San Francisco.
Right.
I live in San Francisco. We have a remote office here.
Oh, you do have a remote office here? Okay. So you're actually a resident of California, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That report came out, and I read it very quickly. I think I got it late Friday afternoon. I can go back and retrieve the email that the director sent to me with a copy of the report that you submitted, and it was clearly in draft form. And in looking at that and taking the time out of my afternoon, is I thought that I took it very seriously. Some of the findings that were in that draft report, I immediately contacted the director and requested that he get in touch with you, because I felt that our vendor should have had the opportunity to sit down with ESI on a draft report. In my earlier life, I'm a CPA, and I happen to work in auditing for 3 years. And I know that one of the things that we always did is we sat down with the client and went over any draft reports to give the client an opportunity to either explain, or may not change the report at all. You may not change the wording, but at the same time give the client an opportunity to say that, well, here's the reason why this happened or it didn't happen, or there's an explanation for a proposed finding in a draft report. And I took that draft report as being that. I also asked that an email be sent to Mr. Hugh Shannon at the County Commissioner's Office requesting that you make yourself available. I recognize that was a draft report, and it was delivered to the County Commissioners, which becomes a public document very quickly. And I understand that you only had a 2-hour notice and you were on a plane to San Francisco, I believe, that afternoon. But there was nobody else available here to immediately sit down with our vendor, in this case, Diebold Election Systems, to go forward on this draft report to address some of these findings. Subsequent to that, there was no ability, as I think, except for I asked the director to give people a copy of the draft report so that we could, to the degree possible with what was in there, could start addressing some of those concerns. Subsequent to that, as I had a conversation, I believe, with the county administrator, saying, you know, again, on Monday, all this taking place over the weekend, on Monday, that I felt that there's some serious allegations as to the integrity of this election. I had a conversation with each of my colleagues on the board here individually with that, and we had come to the conclusion that we may have to scrap a whole system if these allegations were accurate that were in the draft report, and would have to move to an entirely different system in the November election. We were looking for answers at that time. On Tuesday morning, the draft report, based upon a public records request, as I understand it, to the county commissioner, was put up on their website and has left an impression in this community here that there is a flawed election system in place in Cuyahoga County. Now, I'm very upset about this because I think that this attributes to the conspiracy theory that somehow machines don't work and the election is going to be inaccurate and every vote's not going to be counted. And I'm very disturbed and about the professionalism and the way that you address this. And I have to go on record and I have to explain that to you because I think that, let me ask you a question. Are you ITA certified insofar as?
No.
So,
but I will add that many of the team members regularly do contract work for the Election Assistance Commission. The team that works together to produce this document all have worked in and continue to work in elections all over the country for election officials. And some of these are election officials from other parts.
You've done other work in Ohio too.
Yes. In Franklin County.
And I can appreciate that. And I took the time to kind of check on the work I've had good reports, I've had bad reports. But I just, I mean, to drop something like this out in Cuyahoga County, where in almost every meeting we have conspiracy theories presented to the board by various individuals as to why our election is flawed, and then to leave something like this out there, I find that it is almost borders on criminal negligence on your part.
Can I respond?
You're more than welcome to respond.
Okay, I think I can understand, I think appreciate where you're coming from. In this case, we're working for a client. Our client, in this case, is the Cuyahoga County Commissioners. We took direction only from them. With respect to the timing of this report, we had no control. That was not our decision to make. We were answering to our client. That's how that occurred. Secondly, let me just address the issue with respect to the election system. Let's be specific when we're talking about election system, because I think many that we've seen that haven't read the report, or perhaps listened to the statement, believe that when we talk about an election system, we're talking about a particular vendor or a particular vendor's equipment. And that's not what we're addressing here. We were trying to understand in our formal report, how does this piece of equipment work when you put it in the hands of people that have been working here at the Board of Elections for quite some time, know how elections run, and in a county that's a fairly large county. How does the system operate? The whole system, all of it. Does it function accurately? Can data be transferred from one medium to another reliably? That's what we were looking at, and that's what our report reflected. Since then, we started a forensic investigation, which is really a second study, which is how does this system work when you have the experts from the vendor here helping us? And what we've learned is when you have the experts here, many of the issues that you raise when the regular folks are operating the system go away. That's what we're learning. And so there are really two different efforts here. But in terms of the timing, I can't answer those questions.
Ms. Hertzberg, in regards to you bring up two good points here. The first point is I understand that your client is a Cuyahoga County Commissioner. And we understand, or understood, or at least this board member, speaking for myself, my colleagues can certainly speak for them, understood that you were doing an exit poll analysis, which we welcomed as to the acceptability of the machine and as to poll worker ability to handle the election. We certainly don't need to require that, as I thought that report was very favorable. Frankly, I was not aware that there was anything beyond that contract that you had received. But I'm going to go back to the first. I was told that we could not have contact with your firm without going through Hugh Shannon, the Board of Election, or the Board of County Commissioners, and would be part of any discussion. And I understand any parameters that want to be put forth by people in the bill, which in this case is the County Commissioners. I have the highest respect for them. However, again, I'm going to say, to lay this report out without having Bennett, which we have had in place for some time in the first election, have the opportunity to at least meet and go over this called draft report. I want to say again, is I think it's a great deal of negligence on your part, even in dealing with your client, in this case, Cuyahoga County Commissioners, to say, wait a second, gentlemen, this is a draft report, and you put it up on the website, you're going to maybe leave an impression with the voting public in Cuyahoga County that there's something wrong with the election system. We think we ought to at least meet with the vendor to do that. It seems to me that in that time period, every roadblock that could possibly be put up to bring you and the vendor together was put up, and I question whether this was intentionally done to embarrass this board and its members.
Okay, I think I can shed some light on that. I can't speak for the county commissioners, but I can certainly tell you a little bit more about what actually occurred. That Friday, where you requested my assistance and me to be available, it wasn't 2 hours, it was actually 15 minutes. I was literally packing my luggage, and the last thing I was packing is my laptop.
Well, I gotta tell you, I think I got the report, I go back and look at the email, I think it was mid-afternoon, maybe around 2:30, 3 o'clock, or even later that I got the report, so I didn't have much time to respond, and I read it very quickly.
I mean, I can't.
And I did try to get a hold of you.
And I responded, look, I was directed by my client, because I hadn't seen my wife for a month, to go home and see my wife and come back Monday. That's what I did. I'm not gonna apologize for doing that. You know, I've been away for 4 months, and I wanted to go see my wife. I did not make the rules here about how contact was to be made. That's not my call. I'm operating under instructions of a client. I would apologize that you're upset, I can understand it, but I think if you reread that section, and you read what we actually said, and you read the recommendations, and I think the very first recommendation was, we want to meet with the vendor. I think the second recommendation was, we want to do a forensic analysis, because we think that once we uncover information, our findings will get better, not worse. I mean, I think we said those in the report. I think we also tried to say that, while we can't rule out computational dysfunction, we believed the problems or the issues to be human. And I think we try to be as balanced and fair given the constraints as possible. But as soon as we found out the vendor was willing to meet, we were available. We've moved forward as quickly as we possibly could to reconcile these issues.
Well,
I mean, I don't know what else we could do as a vendor here in this situation.
I think that when it comes to the integrity of the election process, whether it's in Cuyahoga County or any place else in this country, when you call into the question of an election system in a draft report as to its accuracy, as to its functional ability, I think that it requires a little bit more careful approach to how you list out. There's 48 other counties in Ohio that you potentially put in jeopardy by having this report laid out there. I got a number of calls from people saying, what's going on?
I'd like to take another view on that. I mean, I'd like to take the glasses half full and half empty view. And that is, good thing that we figured this stuff out now. Good thing that we are understanding that sometimes data from the machine doesn't transfer to the memory card and there's no error message. That happened several times. We all witnessed it in the last few days. I still don't understand why that's occurring. But it's a good thing that that happened now, so that you have time to make sure it doesn't happen in November.
Well, of course, these are new items that have been brought to our attention.
We just learned about them.
Yes, I think that we've agreed that we will take a look at those.
And I applaud what I just heard from Tom before I came up here. I think we were all very pleased to hear that issues that have been brought up are being addressed, immediately. This is just a positive step. I think we all applaud this.
I think, first of all, I appreciate the draft report, and I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your chairman's concern. I think at the end of the day, I think it's important that you provide a final report to your client that can also be posted on your website to clarify and to deal with those reconciled items. Okay. And I appreciate you making this statement now. However, my request, today's Wednesday. This board. So I'm surprised that you would say that you were unaware of it. More importantly, from an integrity perspective, I hope that you and Debo will meet immediately after we speak to deal with item number 2. To me, that's a little problem item because that goes to the integrity. As Mr. Hayes pointed out, based upon the information that he had prior to your presenting this statement, we were collectively of the view that we were all on the same page with respect to that particular item. And now you're raising other issues. What am I missing? What happened?
Well, actually, it was reported in our report. It came up again in front of all of us. I had never actually personally witnessed this event, but what we saw.
When did it come up?
Sunday at 4 p.m.
Say it again.
You're correct. They were reconciled.
The issue, and I allow people should respond back to this, but from my understanding about these 4%, if I'm reading this correctly, it's the issue of the databases. Again, the issue that we had experienced with the May election, where if we make a change in the respective database, that might not accept a memory card. In the same situation is there is a different database or a change that had occurred with the database, and we're trying to recover the archive data off of it. It has to match up. They need to shake hands. I think that's part of the security portion of it, is that the database as well as the embedded memory have to, as Jessica Heiner called it, shake hands to make sure that it's the same, one of the same data that was originally